When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, folks. This is Mark Ludlow, the Fearless Mindset Podcast. It's January, what is the day today? 24th, I think it is, of the new year. And a lot's happened in the last probably 3 months. For one, we got a new year. For another, John Shuman joins us, and everybody knows him from U.S. Bank. Well, he's no longer with U.S. Bank. He's turned a new season too. Welcome aboard, John. Pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mark. It's it was an honor to be on your podcast a while back. Certainly honored to come back, and I have transitioned into a new role, running my own company now. I'm very excited about that. Thankfully, business is booming, but really excited to have a good conversation today, and I've got a couple of things that I'd like to share. Absolutely,
and for the audience, if you don't know who John Shuman is, John Shuman is very dangerous in the EP world. He's done some things. You know, he was Secret Service for 13 years and did a lot of stuff, as you guys can imagine. And he was also the director of security for Target. And then U.S. Bank got jealous and brought him on board at U.S. Bank. And John and I met through actually the Close Protection Conference. I met him there, and he's a good friend of Mike Trout, or Mike Trott, that is. And they know each other, and these guys all know each other. And it's just the power of networking and connecting and creating those relationships. And that's how, survival in this industry looks for you guys that want to break into business. You need to go to where all the major players are, the conferences, and seek out mentorship. Because Kristen Linderson was just on yesterday, and she was VP of over there at Crisis 24 and former FBI agent herself. And, we talked in our podcast about how important it is to network. So you guys, they're listening to this, trying to figure out the way to open that door is just, getting to know each other, building that relationship and trust. So there's a little shout out to Kristen and the Close Protection Conference and what they're doing for the industry. But John and I are talking, and he's making the plunge, the Arctic plunge in the executive protection industry, and I think he will do very well. I know he's busy right now on many projects. And John, what was the one conversation I hear going on out there is the transition from government, law enforcement, and the private sector. What was that like for you leaving Secret Service into Target, and what was the positives and the negatives that you saw leaving Secret Service in the private side?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's a very relevant topic, right? You're going to have a number of law enforcement folks at all levels and our wonderful heroes in the military, transitioning into the private sector. I think for me, my transition, I had found a company that was very interested in having me come in and join their team. That, of course, helps, right? When you have that pull in addition to kind of the desire to transition yourself. But what I kind of tell people is, it's really important that, when you figure out kind of where in the world you kind of want to settle down, you need to understand and figure out which industry is going to match your personality or your passion. You may love the work, but if the culture at the company in that industry isn't a good fit, ultimately, long-term, it probably won't be successful. So, the banking industry is very different than the retail industry. The retail industry is very different than oil and gas or tech, or some of those types of things. So I would start there, right? Figure out what kind of industry do you think would be the best fit for you? And then within that industry, you need to identify some of the companies that are there, and then really spend some time researching those companies, their culture, their values, some of their core principles, how they generate revenue. And then, talk to some folks if you can. Again, I think back to your earlier point about networking, right? Super important, because it'll give you that intel, that information that you need to really try to make a very educated decision about which companies within that industry you want to target. Once you've identified a company within that industry then really I think there's no harm at all in aggressively pursuing opportunity there. The HR systems for sorting out resumes based on keyword searches, some of the online job search notification programs that the companies offer themselves, LinkedIn and other, Indeed, and some of those other companies offer some of those programs as well. I think you can actually get to a point where your email, gets notified with all these jobs that may potentially come up and be a good fit. So in essence, the jobs can almost at this point through technology come to you. I would suggest to everyone, don't try to write your own resume. There's lots of self-help guidebooks out there, and perhaps someone who wrote a resume and it looks good. Pay the $400 to a professional resume prep service. Have that resume professionally prepared. And the reason I say that is because the resume companies out there, they keep up with the absolute latest trends that HR and recruitment divisions within corporations are using. So that resume is going to be formatted letter perfect for exactly the trend or exactly what recruiters and HR teams are looking for today in applicants. So please make that investment. I think it'll pay off. Your $400 will get you a resume that you can email. They'll also give you a format that you can plug into an online or a social media application. They'll give you, if you want, a draft cover letter that is written properly that you can edit and modify as you need. I think it's an investment well worth it. And then be patient. It takes time to work through that process, and then understand that it will be a process when you get hired. It took me 2 years to get in the United States Secret Service, and it was about 12 or 14 different steps. Corporations, although perhaps not that long or that extensive, there still will be several steps in that process and multi interviews, that type of thing. So be prepared to do that. Understand that will be a process that you have to be prepared for every step of the way, just like you had to be when you were trying to get into law enforcement and get through some of the application process, et cetera. Once you get to that part where we're talking about an offer, please have realistic salary expectations. Sometimes people, they've got a very impressive military record. They've got a very impressive law enforcement record. And sometimes they make the mistake of thinking that is going to automatically translate into an enormous financial package in the private sector. And unfortunately, more often than not, that's just not the case. You have to take that very impressive set of skills you have, which is why you walked through the front door of that corporation. You have to take that impressive skill set now and really earn and drive your reputation within that company, add value, be a good cultural fit, and earn your way to that, to that desired income. Probably won't happen day one, but if you don't walk through the door of that corporation, become a good teammate, assimilate into the culture, and start to add value day one, you're never going to get to 5-6 years down the road with that same company and that desired income that you're looking for. So please be realistic with salary expectations. Plan to be there and really add value over the long term. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of people make, and it was something I struggled with when I first got into the private sector, was understanding that as a federal agent or law enforcement or military person, we over time develop a professional identity, a personality that is tethered to what it is we do professionally, right? We're used to having some level of government-backed authority. We're used to having some sort of statutory power. We're used to having some sort of authority based on tactics, etc. You have got to understand that when you go into a private sector, you've got to take your skills through the door with you. Leave the Secret Service attitude at the door. Leave the cold. I am a Fed. Do as I say. Please leave all that outside. Walk in with a renewed sort of invigorated attitude about, okay, I'm new here. I want and I have to fit into this corporate culture to be successful. I've got all my skills with me. I've got all the things with me, the reason that they hired me and the reason they're excited to add me to the team. But I have to understand that my part of that deal is assimilating into their culture. It doesn't work the other way around. If you go in and you're trying to take an old school rigid mentality with you, I don't think, honestly, you'll do very well. I don't think you'll last very long. You're going to scare people. People are just going to determine that you're not a good cultural fit. And then I don't know that things will go very successful for you. So that, I think, is the biggest thing once you get into role, and just understanding that you have to assimilate into their culture. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, those are great breaking in industry tips for the audience that, if you're listening to this podcast and hearing, John's advice on how to break in, especially if you're transitioning to law enforcement, I hear, like you said, you got to leave the ego at the door and become a teammate and focus on the culture. And it's, there's so many various cultures. You have cultures in, corporate and Target where he was at, in U.S. Bank, and then you have the tech culture, totally two different industries, two different animals, and they desire different things from their agents. And so that's, I think that's why, there's so many podcasts out there covering security, because there's so many different styles and behaviors and personality types that fit different industry needs. And John, I know you're successful, obviously, at Target, and then you blew up. And then was there a difference from retail versus the banking sector? Did you see a big difference as the two different industries when you did security and provide security management, protective services?
Yeah, I think there's a huge difference. The biggest difference, I think, that I would highlight to this audience is that banking is one of the few industries that is regulated end to end. So everything a bank does at every turn is going to be scrutinized. It's auditable. It's regulated, and there can be enormous penalties if there are gaps or control deficiencies in that environment. And so, retail is regulated too. There's the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. There's some other issues as it relates to supply chain and sourcing and factories, that type of thing. And certainly all corporations have enormous concerns about reputational risk and not wanting to be portrayed negatively publicly. But when you look at some of the industries like healthcare and banking that are regulated just about end to end, you have to ensure that as you build out your corporate security team, which would include, in most cases, an executive protection, or what I like to call an executive services team, as you build those things out, you have to build the regulatory governance and compliance component along with that every step of the way. So you can't have any outliers. You can't have any part of your team, any of your policies, your procedures, your day-to-day activities. None of that can be done without a regulatory overwatch, and be prepared to evidence that on demand, because the various federal regulatory agencies can come in whenever they want and conduct whatever scope or scale of examination they want. And you need to be prepared to provide the evidence and demonstrate that you have not only a robust, effective corporate security program, but just as importantly, in the banking and in the healthcare industries, you have to have a control environment around that corporate security program that is ensuring all of its actions and everyone inside, day to day executing on those actions is doing it in a compliant and regulatory way. And again, the penalties for not doing that can be severe, as we've seen happen with a few banks in the last number of years. So I think the regulatory nature of banking as opposed to retail, I think, was probably one of the biggest differences that I noticed in making the transition.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you'd be FDIC involved, and there are regulatory body that's involved in addition to that. It's like, I used to be a banker back before 2008 market crash. I was a WAMU banker, worked for Key Bank, relationship manager, account executive for WAMU, and it was very heavy regulatory. Then the market crashed, and of course moved into Southern California, got in the private sector, and then looked back, like you could have banking. Not my animal.
Yeah.
But it's there's a lot going on, as you know, John, and you must be excited. Starting your own thing, and I'm sure you can offer a lot of people business advice, because you are getting in business yourself. And everybody wants to contract. Everybody wants to land that $1 million contract or a $500,000 contract. I mean, that's the dream of some. I think they go, oh, well, I'll use a certain person in the industry who sold this company a couple times, and everybody, I call it success envy. But with that success, there's a price to pay for that success. You have to have your ducks lined up in a row. And business ownership is no easy task. You and I've been self-employed for a while. You're getting into it. What do you see as the challenges in starting up from day one for you?
Yeah, I think that really, my associates and I, the approach that we take with clients and with business really is twofold. One, and it kind of gets back to our earlier conversation point about salary expectations, making a transition, right? Go into a corporation as a client now and prove to them, perhaps on a smaller scale, that you are a very effective third-party vendor. You're a very effective contractor or subject matter expert. Them bringing you in and completing a project was a huge success. They're excited about it. They're fired up about it. And the idea is, now ensure that they understand the other products and services that you offer. And you're going to, I think, expand that relationship over time. But it starts with win number one. And you need to go in there, no matter how big or small the project is, with the same attitude, right? The same mindset. And that is, we are going to deliver exactly what we said we would deliver. We will deliver it on time and on budget. And you're going to be thrilled with the outcome. And if you're not, we are going to stand front and center, shoulder to shoulder, and get it fixed and modify and edit until it is exactly what we all expect it to be. You do that, and I think now you have earned some credibility with that company. They're going to expand that relationship a little bit. I think some of the other strategies that we use is, and we do this a lot in the workplace violence mitigation space. We'll have companies contact us. Those companies will need us to come in, do a threat assessment on a workplace violence prevention issue, right? We'll go in, we'll conduct that assessment. And then, of course, based on that assessment, there could be some second and third order action that's necessary, whether it's bringing in physical security resources, whether it's helping them design a workplace violence prevention team, whether it's bringing in some people to conduct some threat assessment training. So when you come in and you are able to help a company in one space, be prepared, be ready to help them based on that first move with second and third order work and assistance in some of the other spaces. That's all as a result of that trunk line issue you came in. And if you can't provide that service, or you can't outsource that service to a very trusted colleague or a partner, then you need to be very honest with them about that and say, listen, I do this, I don't do this. I've got some ideas for how I can help you find the right people, but don't look at an ever expanding retainer or contract and then kind of fake it to make it, or bring someone in that might or might not be a true subject matter expert, may or may not have the proper licensure or experience. Don't do that. That'll backfire on you, and you'll destroy credibility with clients and with customers. And certainly you don't want to do that.
What is the biggest complaint that you had from, let's say of course you ran U.S. Bank for a while, and if you had providers servicing your bank, what was your boss's biggest complaint about different vendors? What did you hear the most about the negatives of what could get them fired the quickest on a project?
Well, I think that most of the special project or the one-off stuff that we did, again, banking is regulated end to end. So any third party or even fourth party you bring to the show has to go through an unbelievable amount of due diligence and vetting to make sure that you're bringing someone in that isn't going to cause the bank embarrassment or harm. I think when you look at some of the standard partnerships we had with different companies, and day over day over day over day for months or for years, there's that relationship. Most of the time, of course, the relationship I thought was very good because there was a great deal of connectivity and quality control on both sides. But certainly when you start to look at physical security incidents happening at non-retail or operational buildings, and you start to look at more thoroughly what happened in those incidents, and you see negligence, or you see unprofessionalism, or you see that post orders weren't followed, or other intentional misses, right? I think those were the things that probably caused us the most heartburn. And in a couple of cases, if you have enough of those incidents happening at the same facilities, then it's becoming systemic. And at that point, you have to address it. You have to make some decisions about change. And as long as you've got a well-documented history of what led up to that decision, and you have taken the leadership of that vendor along collaboratively the whole time in talking about those issues, I think, I've never gotten to a point at the end of a series of incidents where finally it was time to make some decisions about business continuity and the relationship with that vendor. I've never really gotten to a point where I was at odds with the leadership of that company because, we had been looking and examining and investigating these incidents for, in some cases weeks, in some cases months, and we almost together sort of could agree that it was time for a change. And so I think just be collaborative, bring those people along, show them the respect that they deserve, and and address problems together. But certainly, physical security incidents that just seemed to over time become more of a systemic problem was certainly among the biggest sources of heartburn that we had, on my team.
Right. Now that you're jumping into your own Shuman Consulting services and getting into that, what is your thoughts on where you're going to see the most business from? Is it going to be more COVID issues, workplace violence, hybrid going back to the workplace, people frustrated, or midterm elections coming up, political division, civil unrest? What's your thoughts from a 40,000 foot elevation looking down on it all? What is your clients telling you now?
Yeah, really, the two biggest sort of areas that we're very focused in right now and very active. Really, one, you're looking at a lot of calls from companies that need executive protection type services, and connecting them with the right professionals, ensuring that those needs are being met. They're being met at the tier one professional level. And that certainly has been one of our biggest engagements to date. I really think the other thing, and this probably will be one of my top priorities in 22, sorry, I'm getting up.
It's all right. Welcome to technology, folks.
Yeah,
it happens.
Okay. No,
welcome
I think one of the
welcome to CNN and the Marine Corps Network.
yeah. No, it's I think one of my biggest priorities, I think in 22 is really going to be, and we're getting calls every week corporations are realizing that they need to become more self-sufficient in the safety and security space. And that's really because over the last 24 months, you've seen a slow and steady decline in law enforcement's ability to position themselves to assist as they've historically done in the past. Why? I think that, the numbers of officers available to assist is going down through early retirement and attrition. I think higher priority 911 or life safety calls are dominating what the complement of officers on duty are having to concern themselves with. And in some cases, as concerning as it sounds, civic leadership or other leadership, instructing officers not to get themselves involved with, nonviolent interactions, vagrancy, panhandling, harassment, drug, alcohol abuse, gambling, in some cases, homeless on homeless, violence, some property crimes, vandalism, burglary, theft. And so corporations are going to have to find a solution for that. And they're turning to us to kind of help them with that. And I think what we're telling them is really consider four things. Consider looking inward. Can your existing corporate security team wear multiple hats and perform multiple duties? Can your executive protection team assist and augment armed security at a facility? Can your global security operations center, the technicians there, can they expand their reporting and triage of incidents? Can your investigators help get investigations off the ground and in a good place to hand off to law enforcement? They may be more willing to take those cases. Your regional security managers, can they customize security plans for your facilities and the employees that work in those facilities? Workplace violence, use your existing skills. Can they expand to include a broader range of threat assessment and mitigation? And really your crisis management teams, they do an amazing job at dealing with multi-market business disruption. But it's time that perhaps if they aren't already, they need to be looking at man-made or people-made multiple market disruptions in addition to wildfires and electrical outages. And so you look at some of that stuff. If you don't have a bona fide intelligence team, I absolutely would encourage a company to consider building one out or contracting a third-party vendor for that. And that kind of leads into the second one, and that's hiring private security contractors. Finding good companies that have either professionals that they've trained extensively through their own training program, or your ex-law enforcement, your heroes in the military that have retired and are looking for some part-time work, bringing those folks in to help protect your facilities and your people. The other big thing that we are always looking at with the company is anywhere that we can cut down on what we call an employee's pedestrian commute. So it's the space between their public transit stop and the front door of the building, and or their parking spot and the front door of the building. If we can cut down that pedestrian commute as much as possible, we can enhance their security posture significantly and decrease the rate of incidents. And you really do that with taking a look at potentially subsidizing parking and or incorporating some type of shuttle program. And then finally, is truly work from home, keeping employees working remote, is that your cleanest solution, right? It's certainly safer for the employees, probably in the long run more cost efficient. Obviously, that's a decision that businesses have to make and consider, and whether or not it aligns with their day-to-day or their culture. But there are some solutions there. And so I really think that a big part of what we're going to do in 2022 and 2023 is going to be helping companies design programs to make them more self-sufficient in the safety and security space.
Wow, you covered a lot, John. That was a full couple of chapters in your future book right there. For you guys joining us, wondering who this is. This is John Shuman. He's just retired or left U.S. Bank as a chief security officer at U.S. Bank, and retired, left the U.S. Secret Service after 13 years. And John's just sharing with the audience, his new season of starting his own company, Shuman Consulting, launching into that with some partnerships that he has out there, and what he's doing right now in building his business and providing protective services and intel services, different people, different clients that he has coming on board. And he's pretty excited. I'd be excited too. Anything you can call your own with your own name on it, like you have on your LinkedIn page, and it's your flag now. And that's got to be. Have you always wanted to have a business, John? Is that kind of the thing you've always wanted to be an entrepreneur at one time or another?
I have. I've had some folks in my family do it very successfully. I was very motivated by them. I've had the honor and privilege of working for some leaders that have gone on to do that type of thing. And for me, what I love is I love the idea of coming in and helping people solve problems. And I've always wanted to come in with some trusted colleagues and associates, which I have the privilege to work alongside, and really have a huge influence in exactly how we come in and we solve something that's giving people heartburn, or scaring people, or causing business disruption, or slowing things down, or putting people at risk. And the ability to come in and take that stress off people and get that business up and running the way that it should be, and I get to customize the solution. For me, it's exciting, and it's a privilege. I really am honored to be able to walk into some of these folks and help them out, and bring in some world-class professionals, to include folks like yourself, Mark, world-class professionals to work alongside and figure it out. So it's been exciting, and I think the best is ahead of us.
I gotta ask you this: since you went live on LinkedIn, I remember we talked offline that your inbox is blowing up, literally.
Yeah, it's
how's the traction been on your end? How's the inquiries been? Have you exploded in interest and working with you? Gone up?
Yeah, it's we've gotten just a ton of interest from small companies right up to major Fortune 500 companies that want us to come in, and they want us to talk about some things. We've gotten some government interest. We've gotten some public sector interest from some folks. So I think the frequent flyer miles are gonna stack up here. That's probably a good thing. It's www.shumansecurityconsulting.com is the website, and there's a contact form in there. And the interest has been great. It's humbling, but at the same time, we're excited to roll up our sleeves and help companies big and small, high net worth individuals, government at state and local, federal levels, solve problems, and that's what we love to do. And so we'll get busy.
What is your forecast? Where do you think we're going to have the biggest problems from this year? Is it going to be? I'm hearing people say, cyber stuff will be the big one. I'm hearing the Wall Street's going to be another one. Going back to work's going to be another one. What's going to be the biggest pain in the corporations we're in for security services, you think?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, the fact that I just don't believe law enforcement is positioned now the way maybe they were 5 years ago to assist private companies with a lot of the things they historically had, forcing companies, right, to become more self-sufficient. I think that's a big worry of mine. I think as you look at prices going up and inflation, and if the economy struggles, and if Wall Street is impacted by things like Ukraine or rising tensions with China, et cetera, obviously that has an adverse effect on Wall Street typically. And then you look at COVID, and although a lot of people argue Omicron is a minor variant by comparison, it still was impactful and is impactful,
Sure.
right?
Right.
So is there another variant coming down the pipe, and is that going to continue to create fear and stress? And then you mix all those things together, understanding that some very contentious midterm elections are coming. And I think there's a lot there to be concerned about. And that's why you need to prepare now. Be proactive now. If you think there are gaps in your program, address them now. Don't try to address them mid-fire. Deal with them now so that you're prepared and ready to deal with that, before it kicks off. And we'll pray for the best, we'll plan for the worst, but remember, hope is never part of a plan. We certainly hope for the best, but it's never part of a plan. So be ready and bring in the right people and make sure your program is ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good statement, in what you just said, because I know I've had so many clients, they're reactionary in their approach at security. I have a client in San Francisco, I'm not going to say name because the NDAs that signed and all that, but everything is always on a reaction-based need. It's versus, like you said, create a program, something, continuity, consistency is huge, something that's reliable. And if you're always pulling the trigger out of fear, you're always going to be, I know as a chief security officer, you're overseeing a security budget for the bank, I'm sure. And I know many directors of security probably are responsible for budgets, and they got to, they can probably have to present to the C-suite on why they have to spend this amount of money. And maybe they're getting over their head and they need a guy like John Shuman to come on board and say, yeah, this is the reasons why. And we call it justifying the invoice, right? And so you need to reach out to John Shuman and his team and say, hey, can you take a second look? And it might be worth $1,000 consulting fee, because he'll say he can make you look good to the C-suite. John and his team can make you really look like the golden child to save the year. And he may see some stuff in your policy or do some system breaches in your organization to find out where your weak spots are. And you need to do these things now while it's quiet. Nothing's happened yet, because this is the first 3 months of the year are always the months of preparation, budgets, trying to figure out what we're going to spend our money at. And John, having spent 13 years at U.S. Bank, spent several years at U.S. Bank, he kind of knows what's going on in the global sense, stateside at least. And I'm sure he's got partnerships all over the world because you're trying to U.S. Secret Service. And if you're in over your head, maybe you're a young guy, maybe you're a young woman, you just got offered this role, and maybe you're chief information officer in charge of information technology security, and you just got this title, chief security officer, and you're a tech company, you don't know what to do, and you're listening to this podcast. I recommend John, because he has the expertise, and fly him out to Silicon Valley and meet with your team, or maybe meet your shareholders, or maybe you're a law firm and your clients pulling their hair out because they don't know what to do with what's coming up. They're scared. And John can offer continuing education with different law firms out there as well. And and you can get credit towards your profession with those educational pieces. So there's so many things out there I think people really don't realize they need. And you're a C-suite, you're an executive, or you're running a family office for that matter, and you need some guidance on how to prepare for the year. Again, John Shuman is an expert in this industry. He loves policy procedures and stuff. I'm the more vision guy. Policy procedures, I'm like, okay, where's John? I need you over here. But this is his. What do you call that? Your trade craft. That's your genius. This is definitely your genius, because you get passionate about the boring things of security versus everybody else in the security guys like, well, I want to go carry a gun and go do some EP training for the weekend, and you're in the nitty gritty details of what puts a lot of programs to sleep, because you understand it, because you lived and breathed it. And I have to say, you're like the Mark Zuckerberg in poly procedure type thing. The way you talk is like, holy crap, this is over my head. You're just a genius where you operate at. It's very genius. I've never met a guy like John Shuman who is passionate about the details of security. And you have the Byron Rogers out there, very passionate about training. He loves pistols and all that. Elijah Shah, he's in the celebrity world. I'm background as a royal family member. Now I'm kind of corporate stuff. And everybody has a unique gifts, and John is definitely gifted in so many different detailed ways that it's very, very intriguing to me to see how your brain thinks on different matters, and then giving these organizations or thought leaders in different business organizations advice, and you can make them look good and probably maybe even save them their job because they have the right information.
Yeah. No, well, Mark, you're very kind words, probably more than I know more than I deserve. Thank you though for the kind words. And there's a lot of wonderful professionals in this business. There's a lot of wonderful young professionals that want to get into this business. I think we have a duty and an obligation to help them the way that some of our mentors helped us. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with collaboration, information sharing. The one thing I love about generally the security industry and even in the corporate security industry is that really it's one of the few areas of the corporation that isn't it's not incentivized to compete, right? There's no incentive for me to share information or ideas with the chief security officer of Wells Fargo or Bank of America or some of those other organizations, right? Because the same threats and risks that are trying to knock down our door, we're trying to knock down their doors too. And so having that collaboration and that sort of, as we like to say, interagency cooperation, right? Interbank collaboration, cooperation is critical. It's vital. And, I'd be nervous if I met a security leader or security team that had constructed a silo around their organization and weren't talking with other networking, benchmarking with other organizations, especially organizations within their industry. So I think you hit it right on the head. It's really, really important that we collaborate and chat. And you can, believe me, you can do, hard to believe, you can do as much damage with a fountain pen as a 9mm. So
Well
respect both and point both in a safe direction.
Now, are you going to be writing any book here anytime soon, John? That you're kind of retired and doing your own thing, so you start getting autographs.
Boy, I tell you what, I've read some books from people in this industry way smarter than me. So I don't know how mine would rate against any of theirs, but maybe you and I will team up on something.
There you go. I mean, the audience probably want to know, what are you most passionate about now that you have your own business? What's the thing that gets you up in the morning? I know you like doing risk assessments, that gets you, but what's the thing that scares you the most about this business? I'll put it that way. What's the thing that makes you go, wow, if this happened, we're all in trouble?
Yeah, it's active shooter workplace violence incidents. If there is a problem somewhere, then I would love to be able to come in and help solve for that and prevent someone from being hurt or worse. And what would haunt me, the rest of my life, as would I think a lot of us in this business, is if that opportunity presented itself and either that moment wasn't seized upon and that solution wasn't created and that poor employee suffered as a result or worse, or nothing was done. It wasn't correctly assessed. And as a result, something was missed and someone lost their life or got, seriously injured. I think that to me is just something that I think about every day. I thought about it every day in the Secret Service. I thought about it every day in the private sector, and I still think about it every day today. And then that is, I think the other big thing is if you're able to come in and help a company design or build or repair, remediate something that prevents them from enormous reputational harm, enormous government or regulatory agency fines, if it restores the faith that the employees and the customers have in that business's ability to deliver, and you can be part of that solution, I think that's something you take a lot of pride in. I know we certainly do. And so I think those are the two things that are kind of always on my mind.
I got to ask you, there's a lot of attention on the border right now, and a lot of, people coming across the border right now that could be, the thoughts in the security world are, are they known terrorists, or what's the biggest threat right now to domestic, United States now? Is it going to be lone wolves acting out, or little cells expanding, growing in the U.S.? Have you have any intel on that, or insight on any advice on that, and the intel from the intel world on possible, cell attacks in the U.S.?
Yeah, certainly, some of the offline discussions I have with some past and present colleagues, I probably wouldn't be able to articulate today at this forum. But
Sure.
what I will say is this: to our heroes in the Border Patrol and in our immigration services, and in our local and state law enforcement down there, and in our military down there, I can't even begin to tell you how much we appreciate how hard and difficult and thankless your job is. And they are under supported. They are overwhelmed. It has to change. It's dangerous. It is very easy to sit behind a desk and send others marching off to war, and go down there and spend a day shoulder to shoulder with those heroes. And you're gonna come back, I think, with a renewed sense of appreciation for how hard that is, because it is. I have to believe that is, if not it's one of the most difficult domestic law enforcement jobs in history, is what's happening down there right now. And my heart goes out to them. I just want them to stay safe. But it's I can only hope that the various entities that are responsible and accountable for tracking and keeping track of folks to make sure that the bad actors aren't getting into the wrong place. I can only hope that those folks responsible and accountable for doing that are taking that responsibility very seriously.
Well said. Couldn't say it better myself, actually. But yeah, definitely need our support down there in the border. I mean, they're seeing stuff they've never seen before. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But it's the times we live in, and that's why we got to support our military and law enforcement, men and women in blue. They keep our country, our city safe.
Agreed.
Yeah. With
Agreed.
that said, do you have any other more information you want to share, John, with the audience on services or anything that's coming up, or anything you're excited about? Any new business? You don't want to go into too much business contracts. That's NDA stuff. You don't want to tell the whole world about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, again, Mark, thank you for this opportunity, this platform. I know you have, I think, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of viewers. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to your audience and collaborate, share information. Anyone can call me with a question free of charge anytime they want. I'll do my best to get back to you timely. I want to see everyone succeed. I want to see everyone stay safe. To our men and women in uniform, you have my absolute undying thanks for your courage and your sacrifice. And you said it best, Mark. Our incredible folks in the military and law enforcement that put their lives on the line every day. They're heroes. And just know that there are a number of us out there that appreciate and respect what they do every day, and wouldn't hesitate to come to their aid if they needed it, because we know for a fact they would come to our aid if we needed it, and they do it every day. So really appreciate the opportunity to speak to them as well. Yeah,
I appreciate that, John. I'm sure that means a lot to our law enforcement, men and women in service uniform, serving our country across the world, abroad. And my thanks to you guys too for what you do to keeping our country safe during these very difficult times we're going through as a country. And it'll get better. Our best days are ahead of us. And don't give up. I'm a Marine, and John, of course, Secret Service retired, and we know our America's best days are ahead. So don't get caught up in the media stuff. Don't get caught up in the propaganda. Just listen to more podcasts. Get some real truth. But anyway. Just wanted to give a shout out to John, bring John on the show and let him share. Thanks for the compliments, John. I really appreciate that. The show wouldn't be what it is without, I have to give Michael Trott, the shout out too for being the guy that launched this. He goes, I'm going to be his guinea pig. I think he said guinea pig on this thing. 14, 15 months later, it became a great show because of the guests like yourself and many, many others that have made it what it is. And it's been fun. I've learned a lot about media. I've learned a lot about how to talk with people and not be afraid of the camera looking in your face, and just tell the audience your story, John, on what you've been through, where you've gone, and there's people that want to go in Secret Service eventually, and they can probably reach out to you and say, hey, what do you advise? And we're going to need Secret Service. We're always going to have a president. We'll have President Biden in office. We'll have the next president in office, whoever that is. And it's we got to protect the office. That's the representation of our country, whether you like it or not. I served under Bill Clinton, and I was willing to give my life for my country under his watch because I believe in the value of freedom and the privilege of freedom and what that cost was. So for me, politics are politics. It's polarizing, but we have, freedom is worth the price for what we have, and that's about as much as I'll go into politics today. But John is launching his company, so if you want to get hold of John and talk to him more, pick his brain, feel free to. You can find me on LinkedIn here and YouTube. Follow us on YouTube, and we're on iHeartRadio, Amazon, and many other platforms. Just type in Mark Ludlow. I didn't want to put myself all out there, but with the show, I kind of had to. I was hiding behind the gray curtain as a operator, EP agent, bodyguard, and it kind of changed the course after this. So anyway, folks, thanks for subscribing and thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Fearless Mindset Podcast, and we'll talk to you guys all soon.